Hello and welcome back to my channel. I am Soumya and this is the lecture series on legal and constitutional history. This is the third video of the series in which I am discussing the topic Madras settlement. In our previous videos, we've already studied the topics Charter of 1600, Charter of 1609 and Surat settlement. So before moving forward, I want you to look quickly at this settlement timeline for all the four presidency towns, right? The Surat presidency was set up in the year 1613, Madras in the year 1639, Bombay presidency in the year 1668 and Calcutta in the year 1690. Remember this is the timeline of how the presidencies were set up, when they were set up. One more thing is that even before Surat became a permanent settlement, the company had pushed south and set up a temporary factory at Masulipatam in the year 1611, right, which is present day Andhra Pradesh, then under the rule of Golconda Kingdom. So even before the permanent settlement of Surat, the Britishers had a temporary settlement in Masulipatam in the year 1611. Now, let's get right into the topic of today. We will study this British settlement at Madras in four parts, alright? The first part is the settlement story, how the British actually arrived and set up at Madras. The second part is the administration, how the settlement was governed. Then administration of justice. We will study this in three phases. It is the judicial system. And the fourth part, establishment of the Corporation of Madras and Mayor's Court. These are the four parts. Keep this four-part structure in your head. Now let's get into the first part of the topic, which is the settlement story. The East India Company had already established a permanent factory at Madras in 1613. But Surat wasn't enough. The company wanted a base further along the eastern coast to expand trade, right? So, in the year 1639, an English company official named Francis Day traveled from Masulipatam down to a small town, okay, from a small fishing village called Madras Patnam, and the village fell under the territory of Raja of Chandragiri, a Hindu ruler based at Chandragiri Fort. Francis Day approached the Raja and requested land to build a trading post. The Raja agreed and granted the village of Madras Patnam to the East India Company. Along with this, the Raja also granted the right to mint coins and govern the entire town. Alright, so the Raja of Chandragiri granted the village of Madras Patnam to East India Company. Along with that, two rights were also granted, right to mint money and right to govern the whole town. Okay, so on this land, the company built a fortified settlement named Fort St. George, okay, constructed around 1639-1640. This fort became the nucleus of what would grow into the city of Madras. Okay, now this city of Madras comprised of two towns or two parts. All right, so the area which was around and inside Fort St. George is where the English residents lived, and it was called as the White Town. It was called as the White Town. The area which was adjoining the native, the adjoining the Fort St. George. There lived the native Indians, all right, and that area was called as the Black Town. So they both of these White Town and Black Town together formed the city of Madras. Okay, this is important here because it displays the racial segregation in the naming also, White Town, Black Town, and it is an example of the discriminatory policy of the company. Okay, and this later becomes very relevant, but this is the first uh, situation where you can spot the discriminatory mindset of the company and the discriminatory policy of the company. Now moving forward, administration of the Madras settlement. So once settled, Madras needed someone to run the day-to-day affairs, right? And this is studied in two periods, all right. First period is from the year 1639 to 1665, where Madras was an agency, and the second period is 1665 onwards, all right. So these are two periods. From 1665 onwards, Madras became a presidency. From 1639 to 1665, Madras was not independent. It functioned as a subordinate outpost of Surat, which was already a presidency. The head of Madras during this period was called as an agent, and Madras was a agency. It was not a presidency, it was a agency. So the administration hierarchy was that Surat was presidency and Madras was agency under the Surat presidency. 1665 onwards, Madras was upgraded from agency status to presidency status, just like Surat. The head's title changed from agent to governor. All right. So this is how the status of Madras shifted from being an agency to being a presidency. Why this happened, we will see later. Administration of justice, the next part. This is the most important part, okay? So pay attention. Madras's judicial history is studied in three clear phases, okay? We will study this in three clear phases. Moving on to the first phase, year 1639 to 1678. In this phase, during this phase, justice was delivered through two separate court systems, okay, one for each town. Court of Agent and Council for White Town and Choultry Courts for Black Town. So, the Court of Agent and Council handled both civil and criminal cases involving English population, only for the English population. It applied the English law, okay, but its judicial powers were not clearly defined and it could not decide capital offences, okay, cases involving death penalty. Serious crimes had to be referred to England, okay, for a decision. And given that a one-way sea voyage could take months, this caused enormous delay, all right, because the decision, the entire case had to go to England. So it caused huge delay. Then Choultry courts, these were set up to deliver justice to the native Indian population. They were headed by a local officer called as the Adhikari, who was the village headman. The court handled minor civil and criminal matters for Indians. Serious native cases were referred to the Raja of Chandragiri for decision. Okay. The Choultry courts also doubled as custom house and registration office for movable property, sale of movable property. These courts, there were no fixed procedure. Okay, the court more or less decided matters in its own informal way. One of a huge problem of Choultry court was corruption. Corruption was an issue. Okay, and one very important incident of this issue is the issue of Kanappa. All right. So, in this notable incident, an adhikari named Kanappa, who was arrested and dismissed from office on charges of bribery and corruption after an inquiry by the agent and council. All right. So, this Kanappa was the adhikari and he was dismissed from office on charges of bribery and corruption. After this, what happened? English men began to be appointed to preside over the Choultry courts as well. After this incident, Englishmen began to be appointed to preside over the Choultry courts as well, just like the Court of Agent and Council. Okay, so from here on, Englishmen would preside over the Choultry courts as well. Okay, and they were assisted by a senior Nayak. So, these are the two systems that were followed in the first phase. One very important case in this phase is the case of Essentia Dawes case. All right, the case of Essentia Dawes. It's a critical case, okay, so you have to pay attention. In this case, Essentia Dawes was an English woman who lived in the White Town, and she was charged with murdering her Indian slave girl. So murder is a capital offense, and if you remember, the Court of Agent and Council could not try capital offenses. They did not have the power to do so. So the East India Company realized that if we simply raise Madras from agency to presidency, the agent becomes a governor, and the governor's court, with the help of a jury, can try capital offenses, capital cases. So in the year 1665, Madras was officially raised to the status of presidency, from the status of agency to the status of presidency, and the agent became the governor. Essentia Dawes was then tried by the governor and council with the help of a jury, and in a surprising verdict, she was acquitted. She was not found guilty. All right. So this is the place where Madras's promotion happened from agency status to presidency status in the year 1665, and it marks the boundary between the phases 1 and 2. Now coming to phase 2, year 1678 to 1686. In 1678, Governor Stransham Master reorganized the entire judicial setup of Madras through a judicial plan. All right. The old Court of Agent and Council was renamed the High Court of Judicature. All right. It was renamed as the High Court of Judicature. Now, it was formally inaugurated on 27th March 1678, and it sat twice a week, 2 times in a week. It heard both civil and criminal cases, and criminal trials used the help of a 12-member jury, and civil cases were decided by the court itself. Okay, so this was a huge change. The Choultry courts continued but were also reorganized. Okay, the office of adhikari was replaced by English servants as judges. The number of judges was increased to 3, including a paymaster, a mint master, and a custom master. At least 2 judges were required for a valid trial. Jurisdiction was limited up to 50 pagodas in civil matters and only minor criminal matters. Appeals from Choultry court went to the High Court of Judicature. An important innovation here was that court proceedings and decisions began to be formally recorded. Okay, an early route of today's practice of maintaining court record. So this is where it was an innovation here, and it began here. So this was phase 2. Now moving on to phase 3, year 1686 to 1726. So by this stage, company trade was expanding fast, and so was unauthorized private trade by English merchants operating outside company control. This caused the company financial losses, and the company needed real judicial authority to control this unauthorized private trade. So what happened? Two charters came up. Two charters were issued. The Charter of 1683 forming the Admiralty Court and the Charter of 1687 forming the Corporation of Madras and Mayor's Court. So the Charter of 1683 was issued by King Charles II. Okay, it established the Court of Admiralty at Madras on 10th July 1686 with John Gray appointed as its first judge. After 1 year, a trained lawyer, Sir John Biggs, was appointed as the chief judge. The purpose of this was to try maritime and mercantile cases, the cases of piracy, trespass at sea, damage to ships, and disputes arising during the long sea voyages between England and India. Okay. This court applied the laws and customs of merchants along with rules of equity and good conscience. Its jurisdiction was not limited to maritime matters only, it also handled civil and criminal cases, and it also heard appeals from the mayor's court. It functioned until around 1704, after which its importance declined as the mayor's court took more importance, and eventually appeals began going directly to the governor and the council. All right. Then the Charter of 1687. This is quite important here because later on we see that the mayor's court becomes very important. So this this was modeled directly on the Corporation of London and its mayor's court. This created India's first municipal corporation. All right. In the year 1688, the Corporation of Madras was created, which was India's first municipal corporation. Its purpose was that the Madras government had imposed a house tax on residents to fund the city wall repairs. But locals refused to pay, creating a formal corporation with local Indian members alongside company officials made tax collection easier and more legitimate also. So this was the whole purpose of this. So now coming to the composition of the mayor's court, 1 mayor, 12 aldermen and 60 to 120 burgesses. The mayor was elected annually from among the aldermen who were chosen by the burgesses and aldermen together. The very first mayor was Thale Higginson. Aldermen held office for life and could be removed by the mayor. Vacancies among aldermen were filled by election from the burgesses. So this was about the corporation. Now coming to the mayor's court. So mayor's court was formed by the mayor and aldermen together, also called a court of record. So here the mayor's court heard both civil cases and criminal cases using a jury, all right, and could even impose death sentence with the jury assistance. It sat once every 2 weeks, and appeals from the mayor's court went to Admiralty Court, and after 1707 directly to governor and council. With the mayor's court now handling most matters, the Chaudhry courts were reduced to only very minor cases, staffed by aldermen as judges, sitting twice a week. They continued in this reduced role till 1726. So this was the third part. Now moving on to the fourth part, all right. So by 1726, by this time, Madras had a genuinely complex overlapping court structure, and so did Bombay and Calcutta, each with its own separate arrangement. This created confusion, inconsistency, and duplication across the three presidency towns. That consistency is exactly what the Charter of 1726 was designed to fix. It introduced a uniform court system, the mayor's court in every presidency town, replacing the patchwork of differently named local courts. And we'll study more about the Charter of 1726 in detail in the next video. So that's all for now. Thank you and stay connected.